Welcome to the Poetic Resurrection Podcast, where we explore perceptions. How self-reflecting questions can give you a better understanding of self. I'm your host, Sonia Iris Lozada. Stay tuned. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Poetic Resurrection. And today I am so honored to have Luis J. Rodriguez back with us. Welcome.
Well, thank you. It's my honor, my pleasure to be here.
I mean, you have been doing so much amazing stuff lately. Like every time I see you on social media, you're in Mexico, you're in England and stuff like that. So tell me what you're doing with all these trips.
Well, I'll say that by saying that I'm supposed to be retired. I'm on Social Security. I have Medicare, but I told people I'm not retiring. I'm refiring. And that's the way I feel. I feel like I have another leash on life. Me and my wife, Trini, we're doing very good health-wise, and we're both active. We want to stay that way. You know, we're mature, we're older. We can't do it like we used to be in their 20s, but we can still do a lot of things.
I was about to ask you, where do you get the energy to do all of this? You know, it's incredible.
I think there's three things that might be helpful. One, I realize you have to eat well. I would eat anything and everything. You got to eat well. And then you got to exercise. I think exercise is the key that turns everything. And I don't mean buff, I mean the exercise that works for you for your age on a regular basis. And the third thing is you got to get away from stress, Everything's stressful, I get it, but you got to really know how to wind down, how to renew, how to get going again. And if it gets too stressed, you got to know how to move away. I recommend this for anybody because I think those are the three things that hurt everybody.
Yeah, when I'm stressed out, I have to do some breathing exercises.
Mm-hmm.
Go for a
Mm-hmm.
walk. Look at nature. Nature does
Yeah.
so much for you, man.
Yeah.
I went up to Lake Tahoe, which I have never been to before.
I heard it's beautiful. I don't think I've been there either.
Oh my God. It's hard to breathe because you're up high.
Yeah.
But you know what? I was in Mexico City, which is high, and I didn't get any of that headaches and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Where in Mexico were you? Where recently you left, like last week, I believe it was.
Well, the last time was in Tijuana, was the book fair, the festival.
Mm-hmm.
It was really nice at the cultural center they have there.
Mm-hmm.
And Tijuana, I haven't been there in years. It's uneven, but highly developed areas and really still areas that are just not. But Mexico's like that. It's developing unevenly, but there's a lot of development. And we have a family home in Rosarito Beach, which is like a half an hour south of Tijuana.
Mm-hmm.
And we brought our friends, we invite friends because there's like, I think 18 beds in this
Oh my
little family.
God.
Yeah. Years ago, I used to have meetings there and retreats and everything. I haven't had it in years, especially since the pandemic. I hope to go back there. It's really nice. Mexico is still, again, uneven. But one of the reasons I didn't go back is the violence. It was so bad, the drug cartel wars, but they've calmed down a little bit, I guess. I don't know, but it didn't. It seemed really nice and safe and beautiful. And the beach, everybody was having a good time. A lot of families. So that was the last trip to Mexico. In the last 2, 3 years, I've been to Veracruz, Mexico City several times, Guadalajara several times. I got other trips planned.
Yeah. So are you writing new books? Or I know that we just had the Always Running Festival right here in Pacoima. I mean, that's an honor to have a festival named after one of your books.
It started with the LA Poet Society, Jessica Wilson Cardenas and her husband, Juan Cardenas. They came to me and they had this idea. I think it was Juan's idea. I was, okay, let's do it. I had no idea anybody would care. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The first year, it was at the same spot we had it here, right there in the barrio in Pacoima. It was beautiful. They had vendors, they had books, they had poets, they had music. It was just great. And then the last year, we had the 30th anniversary in North Hollywood.
Ooh.
And I would imagine 500 people showed up.
Is that the one where the actors were there? I
Yeah,
went to that one.
yeah, that was nice. The play was happening, poets, music, vendors. That was really nice. This one was a little smaller, went back to Pacoima, but still it was good. The vendors and a good friend of mine from Oakland who works with the Unhoused brought a booth, the Poor magazine.
Mm-hmm.
They're really good people, and they showed up all the way down from Oakland. And then, of course, other vendors, including Tia Chucha. Tia Chucha shows up all the time with his bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really nice. I mean, I had my friend Freddy Negrete with me, and I'll tell you quickly the story. He's the tattoo master. He's the ink master.
Uh-huh.
40 some years ago, he introduced the black and gray Chicano style tattoo into the tattoo world, which is now the number one style in the world everywhere.
Oh, it's
Europe.
a great style. Is he the one that used to do the cars too?
Yeah. So he came up with that thing of smile now, cry later
Uh-huh.
with those go images that everybody was doing. So he's really famous, but it turns out just really quickly, he was an enemy of mine when I was in the streets in the barrio. He
Really?
shot me, yeah, and then I tried to burn down his house. It turned out he says I was homeless. I go, yeah, I know, we couldn't find your house, But anyway, but he was the artist of the neighborhood. It was really interesting. He was doing these great aerosol pieces, but they weren't just graffiti; they were beautiful art. This is in 1970, early 70s,
Mm-hmm.
seen artwork, and we became friends mainly because of his art. Because I also was the artist of my neighborhood. I painted murals, and
Mm-hmm.
and then one of his homies got killed by the police. A
Mm.
police officer kidnapped him and murdered him in 1977. It was a big case. The cop was actually convicted and sentenced to life. He murdered this 18-year-old Chicano kid, kidnapped him, used his badge to get him out of the car, took him to his house, shot him many times, and claimed that he was kidnapped. So his house, this is a big case. It was big national news then. It kind of died. But police came in there and he was firing with a rifle from his house at the police helicopters and the police cars, and they thought it was the gang kid doing it. And he was just pretending that he was kidnapped. But it turns out he had killed that kid. He finally says, "Hey, I got him. I got him. I had a gun on my ankle." They let him, they opened the doors. The SWAT came in there. The kid was dead. They brought him out like a hero. Everybody's clapping. But then the detectives figured out, wait a minute, this kid's been dead for hours. He was shot 9 times, including 6 times with a shotgun. Well, I think with a handgun and then 4 times with a shotgun. He was in bad shape. And the blood was dried on the walls. And no, he couldn't have just killed him. Anyway, they convicted him for his kidnapping and murder. And I'll tell you real quickly an update. That's how me and Freddie got together, 1977, because I didn't have no more wars. I had no more enemies. I was no longer battling anybody. And I went up to him, yeah, we might have tried to hurt each other when we were young, but let's work together. Um, Pete Wilson, the governor, with the anti-immigrant governor, I don't know if you remember him.
Which one was
He
he?
was Pete Wilson, Governor
Oh,
Pete
I
Wilson.
remember Pete Wilson,
Uh,
yes.
he got this police officer after 13 years to get paroled. He lobbied for him, including an actor from Starsky and Hutch and the Police Officers Association of Police Chiefs. They got him paroled after 13 years. And he ends up getting a police pension, over $1 million. And he died of cancer in 2017. Got a police pension, even though he murdered his kid. That kid's family sued the police. It was denied, and they never saw no compensation. So me and Freddie recently decided to work on a film script of this story.
That's going to be a good one.
Yeah, so I wrote the script with Freddie helping me, and we want to get it done. We're talking to people now. It's just an important story that should never have been forgotten. You know how those things
Yeah.
happen, and nobody talks about it no more. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Freddie was there, and he's famous. He has like a dollars. So everybody lined up with. He's got a book too, Smile Not Cry Later, based on the tattoo thing he created, and my book. So we had people. We signed both books together. It was really nice. People, and
Oh,
and we're enemies. Some of his homeboys that used to be sons of my enemies were there. We were all sweet. It was like, hey, we don't want no more war. They're still at war, but most of us are tired. You know how that
yeah.
goes.
It's like I'm too old for this shit.
Yeah, I ain't got no more war, nobody.
So
No.
you're switching over to writing a script now.
Yeah, I also have a TV pilot for always running. It's really hard getting money. I think I got a good team. It's really hard to get Hollywood, but I don't really care if Hollywood wants to do it. I really care that if we can get the proper people and the right funding. The funding, as you know this
Mm-hmm.
is the problem. We got great stories. We all of us can do great films, but we don't got the funding. And Hollywood is just playing a game.
And it costs a lot.
Costs a lot. And they play a game with us. They show Latinos here and there, and then they put them out. they usually show them in a bad light, and then they move on to other things. Now they're starting to put them up in other films that are not they're heroes here and there, but they're not telling our stories still. And we need to do it. I don't know how it's going to happen. I'm hoping to get some help, but I hope we can do something. I think it's important to tell these stories, especially the ones that got forgotten.
Yeah. And, I grew up in the hood in Chicago, so yeah.
I know. Yeah, yeah. We lived in the same area. Where were you at now?
I was in Bucktown, and
Yeah, yeah, that's right. We talked
yeah.
about it. I was right next door in Humboldt Park, Chicago. And of course, I was trying to do a film about Chicago with John Leguizamo in 2008. We were going to do something because of the Mexican Puerto Rican community got really together there, and John Leguizamo came to me. It's based on something I know was running, but that housing crisis, remember in 2008
Oh, yeah, that was big.
happened. They pulled all the money out of Hollywood. And poor John, he was actually very sweet. He says, I have to move on to other projects. He did that Broadway stuff. He did some, says,
Yeah.
the money's gone. It was sad. I saw him in Broadway. He actually reached out to me and I went backstage with him. He was very nice. But yeah, with that project isn't going to happen.
His solo shows are the ones that I watch in order to learn from him because he's so good.
He was so good and funny, and he brings
Mm-hmm.
knowledge through humor, which takes a lot of skill. And so I really respect what John's doing. And of course, I haven't seen him in years, and I don't really want to bother him with that. I'm not that kind of guy, but I wish him well because he's actually becoming a strong voice for our gente, for the Latino voice. So yeah, I wish him well.
I know. What was that, his play, The Idiot's Guide to the Latino World or something like that? Yeah.
Something about the moron guide to Latino history. I saw that. I saw it on Broadway.
And I saw it on whoever was showing it on a streaming channel.
There was a high school in East Harlem that every year they brought me in 2 or 3 years because they would read my book. They loved the book. And so they got tickets for me. And I went with the principal and the teachers, and we went to see the play. I was like, wow, I really wish I could have gone. But they're very expensive, those tickets. I was thinking, I'm not going to make it. They got me a ticket. I got to see them. And then we went backstage. It was really nice. Yeah.
Wow. See, that's really nice. So when you were in was it England or Ireland?
I went to England, I went to London, then I went to Hull. Hull is the center of the abolitionist movement in England. In 1833, England, of European countries, the first one, not the first one to abolish slavery, but the first one in Europe. Haiti abolished slavery, Mexico abolished slavery earlier, but they abolished they stopped the transatlantic slave trade in 1833. It was a battle, I found out. Parliamentarian named Wilberforce. They have a museum for him, and they have a whole history of slavery. Quite amazing. And what they have since then
Yeah.
is a freedom fest where they celebrate freedom. And I was invited, me and Trini took part because I got him to include Trini.
Yes.
We did a presentation at Hull University, which is really nice. And then we also ended up in a prison. And I've been going to prisons for 43 years, all over. But this is the first time Trini came inside with me, and she was good. She wasn't, I told her, don't be scared, don't worry, nothing's gonna happen. And she was good. And we introduced a Nahuatl song. She sang a Nahuatl song. This is in England, and Healing Circle. And then I introduced creative writing exercises. The thing about this prison, they had a Irish immigrant gang in Liverpool that was getting notoriety, and they didn't know what to do with them, so they sent some of those guys over to Hull, and they were there. And at first, like all the times I show up in prison, they don't know who I am. They always test you. So it was fine. I took the test, but then after a while, they realized that I'm good. I'm cool. And then we had a good time. We had a wonderful time. So that's why we were in England. And then we went to Copenhagen. I'm trying to think, of course, we went to Mexico together, me and Trini. Copenhagen was earlier this year. We went to Havana. I'm trying to think, was it this year?
How was that? Because Havana is very strict about getting in.
Yeah, and the thing about Havana, I loved it. I loved the people. I loved the culture. Casa de las Americas invited me several times, and we did presentations there. I've been there twice already, and the last time I brought Trini with me. She loved it, man. She was totally taken by it. They're suffering a lot. There's a lot of the blockade, the economic blockade really impacts them. There was a lot of blackouts. The lines for gas are long. They're very limited resources, but I will say the people's spirit is very high, very like they're very strong. We did meet people that wanted to leave Cuba, and we talked to them. They told us why. They didn't seem to
Yeah.
be, they didn't want to leave for political reasons so much. They just want to leave because it's hard, really hard right now. But I would tell you that in Havana, maybe I haven't been, we went to another part of Cuba, but for all its pain and poverty, there was no homeless people in the street.
I heard there's no crime.
There's no crime. There was one prostitute that hit me up late at night. Of course, but I talked to her. I was like, and I'm going to do, but I talked to her. There's not that much
Yeah.
prostitution, even though they're there. They pop up. There's people that try to get you to help them get out, that kind of thing. But for the most part, it was
Yeah.
really no crime. People were working. There were music everywhere. I feel really bad because it's a country that should have been allowed to take its desarrollo, this development. Because I've been to countries all over Latin America and it's awful. Honduras is a great people, but poor. Guatemala, El Salvador, of course, Mexico. But what's even worse, I told him, LA, that one of the 10 most richest cities in the world, all these homeless encampments.
Oh, we have a real bad one. But you know what? I think a lot of them are not from California. They come here because it's warm.
Yeah, yeah, I know. It's kind of like an illusion that they give them. Because I found out that as many people die of hunger and or cold in LA as they do in Chicago.
It gets cold here. Yeah.
And you know why they die. But right now, people don't know that desert temperatures fall down. When I was a teenager, I was homeless for 3 years. I found out, yeah, it was, you wonder, you're not prepared and people can freeze. So you have to be prepared. In those days, we didn't have tents or nothing. We were just
Yeah.
cardboard boxes and maybe tarps, not tarps, but plastic. And, we used to call them cardboard condos,
Wow.
and we would put newspapers on our coats so we can get warmer, and or even cardboard, anything to keep you warm. Chicago, when I was working with the homeless there, they have shelters, which LA didn't have and it really doesn't have. They do have some now, but not before. And the shelters are very big, and Chicago has to have them.
Those winters are brutal.
They will kill you, and so. But yeah, so people don't know that about LA. I tell people, be careful. You think you're going to be in sunny California, but just be careful. People need homes, regardless of where they're from. They all need homes. Yeah,
Yeah, it's really sad with the homeless population. I mean, you see them and they all have those little igloo kind of tents, you know? So I know that those were being passed out for a while.
yeah. They were donated, a lot of them in the beginning. Yeah,
Yeah, and in North Hollywood, they have a place where you could stay. It's like those sheds they convert into rooms, and they showed them, but they're
I
limited.
heard about that.
And they have one trailer that's all
Yeah,
the showers and everything that they could go there and take the showers. And then they have these little rooms, but they interview some of the guys and women there, and they were so happy just to have a place.
it's sad to me
Yeah.
because we don't need to have this. People say, well, they're mentally ill and they're drug addicts. Most of them were not when they started. They usually, if they're there long enough, they'll
Mhm.
be mentally ill and drug addicts. Drugs is everywhere. They have people can get any drug you want. There's like going to prison. You can get any drug you want. It's just a sad reality. They're developing all over LA, as you know, big apartment buildings, big offices. The rents are going crazy. You can't really rent here. My whole family moved out of LA. They're in Idaho. My brothers and sisters and their kids. They went to Idaho because they can't live in LA.
I have a friend of mine that's a manager of an apartment building, and I used to manage this apartment building. And a single is $3,000. That is insane.
Madness. It's madness.
For a single
You can do that.
in Hollywood, where it's
I
all tons of traffic, no green spaces, I wouldn't even know how to fix it.
It's something wrong that I don't think any politician has an answer for right now. No, and I think that's the problem. I think the mayor, Karen Bass, is
Hmm.
probably doing better than most, but it's still a problem. We need more. We need a lot more than what's
Yeah.
been going on.
I wonder what happened with all the hotels, the old hotels that were going to take over to make them homes.
Yeah, they did some of them. I had a friend, my brother-in-law, ex-brother-in-law's brother. He spent 40 years in prison and then got out of prison, became homeless. So he worked in one of those hotels. So they got him as a homeless guy in there and they made him a guy to clean up. And he says there's so many problems with them.
Mm.
He said there were so many drug dealers in there. People, they would find them dead in these hotel rooms and they wouldn't say nothing. Then people would come and take them out. And he said there was still a lot of problems, but they've been closing them down. It's kind of weird. They had them and then they closed them down. I heard they're picking up some hotels again, but they got to take care of them. These people need help.
Just can't throw everybody in there and say, okay, bye.
Uh,
There's maintenance involved with
You got
this.
to take care of them. You got to take care of the places, and you got to give them mental health. You got to give them drug treatment, whatever they need. And it's a big problem. And instead of building affordable housing, we end up on the back end putting millions of dollars trying to help people barely make it. We should have done it on the front end, help people survive, and that's, I mean, not even just survive, to thrive. Why in the world are we just barely surviving? Again, LA is like one of the 10 richest cities in the world, in the whole world. We're huge. There's so much money here, billions of dollars in the industry and in Hollywood. And yet we got the largest number of unhoused in the country. It just doesn't make
Well,
sense to
when
me.
we were on strike and the writers were on strike, there was someone, and they put this in the papers. I can't remember who said it. It was someone from the studios. They said, we don't care if the writers lose their home. We're not giving in, or something
Mm,
like that. I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember exactly the phrase, but it's like, it's if I
yeah,
wasn't an actress and actually working, I
yeah.
probably would not be in LA.
I think that's true. And it's sad. It's a beautiful city. It's really glad
The weather's
the
wonderful.
weather's wonderful. I love that there's greens. You have to go out, but there is places, and yet it's a city that people leave. It's not right. San Francisco is another beautiful city, but people aren't making it in San Francisco. It's just,
Oh, it's expensive. It's ridiculously expensive. They're moving outside of it. I had a couple friends that moved down to Puerto Vallarta,
yeah, I know.
and they're not even Mexican.
Yeah, well, you know what's happening, at least in Rosarita, in that area, is a lot of Chicanos. They got money, so maybe they got family connections. They're buying these nice big homes. It used to be all white people. They were buying the beachland front,
Mhm.
but now so there's a lot of Chicanos moving down there, buying these nice places down there. It's cheaper,
A lot cheaper, yeah.
obviously, than if you can't afford it. And there's a room in Rosarito Beach in a beautiful, right next to the house that we're in, that my family is in, $300 for rent. And this is a beautiful spot, beautiful high end, beautiful restaurants, touristy and everything. $300. You can't find that anywhere. Yeah.
No, not. I went to Puebla.
Yeah. It's not in there.
Oh, what a great city. And the rents right downtown, they're $700. And everything's a two bedroom.
Yeah, yeah,
You can't find one bedrooms. Everything's two bedrooms. It was $700, but if you go right outside downtown, then it's 300
yeah.
bucks, 350. And as noisy as that downtown is, I would want to be right downtown.
Well, yeah, yeah. Well, I love Puebla. Any part of Mexico, to me, as you know, Mexico is so different. Every part is different.
Hmm.
People want to make it seem like it's one. They all make it seem. I mean, I love mariachis and rancheras, but that's not most Mexico is not
Hmm.
that. And if you visit, the foods are different. The people are very different. Puebla was beautiful, wonderful. I went to the ruins, Cholula, which is
Yes.
supposed to be the largest.
With the church on top of the.
And then there's a church, how the Spanish conquistadors just built a church on top of their. And then I found out that in San Andres de Solula, which is the neighborhood right next to that area, they built over 300 capillas or chapels over shrines that used to be indigenous. They built this, so it's got every other two or three buildings. It's a chapel because Cortez had them all build them over all their sacred shrines. It's madness, you
It,
know.
it is, but with the one in Cholula, supposedly it was abandoned 400 years ago because of the change in the weather.
Right before
It used to have a lot of water and it became like a desert. So they
in
vacated.
fact, they had to dig it out. It was actually covered
It was
over.
actually covered over, so they I couldn't just say, "Hey, look at it. There's a hill with a flat top. Just build a church." But did you get to walk through it?
I didn't. I did actually on the outside. I didn't go inside.
Yeah, because when you're able to go inside and walk and look in, but because of the pandemic, they
Yeah,
still hadn't opened it when I went. But man, it's the widest pyramid in the world.
exactly. And it's beautiful. I was able to go to Teotihuacan last year, which I don't know if you've been, 40
I've been,
miles.
yeah.
That's amazing. And I spent all day there. And then I was able to go to another beautiful temple right there in Isla Papala. There's a beautiful temple up there that I went to visit that. There's a lot of beautiful spots. When I was in Guatemala, one of the most beautiful ones I went to was Tikal. If ever you're there, I recommend it. Tikal is amazing. It's a Mayan. It's quite beautiful.
Oh,
Oh, it is amazing. And it wasn't touristy. Like Cancun is completely,
yeah.
is gone. But it was very nice, and the room was like $60 to rent. It was really nice, and the beautiful, beautiful temples. So yeah, it's good to visit them and learn. In Veracruz, I went to the Anthropology Museum and learned so much about the Olmecs, the mother culture, and then of course the beautiful one in Mexico City, which is massive. I don't know if you've been there.
I only went through Mexico City because I ended up being in Puebla the whole time I
Yeah.
was there.
Okay. Yeah.
And I go, next time I come, I'm going to stay in Mexico City and go to all the museums. There were so many museums I wanted to see.
You'll love it, especially the central part of the town is amazing.
That's where I
Um,
want to stay.
it's wonderful, and they have some nice places. I don't know what the prices are, but anyway, yeah, I got to see the Anthropology Museum there, and what they do is all they do is honor indigenous culture. Every
I
indigenous
love it.
tribe, they have their things from those tribes from all over Mexico. So they have the big one, Mexica one, but they have from the Mayan Southern all the way to the Rarámuri, which is my mother's tribal roots from Chihuahua, Mexico. And we
Uh-huh.
went through as much as we can, but I didn't even get to the Rarámuri. It was so hard to get through everything. And there's a really good restaurant right there in the bottom stairs, and we had tacos, cricket tacos,
Oh, yes. I saw those all over the
which
place.
are actually very good.
I know
Yeah,
every
they're
time I
actually.
saw them, I'm going, nah.
You would think now, but you know what? I find they're actually quite healthy.
Oh, they're
And
actually
then
actually bugs are
that's
very have high protein.
yeah,
But I wanted to
yeah.
ask you, did
Mhm.
any of this influence any new writing?
Yeah, all the time. Here's one thing I'm thinking of writing. I want to do a book, how ancestral wisdom could guide us today and the future. It's a very hard book to write. There's a lot of books there now about indigenous cosmology, and so I want to do it differently. I spent 2 years. I don't know if you know the Native American poet and activist John Trudell.
I know the
He
name.
passed. Yeah, he was quite famous. He was with AIM, and he became a poet. He passed, a few years ago, but I spent 2 years before he died. I learned a lot from him, but one thing about him is he told me that his grandmother was a Ramuri.
Hmm.
That is, he's Santee Sioux on his father's side, but apparently there was Santee Sioux went down to that area over the Ramuri out in Chihuahua and found this woman and took her to the Santee Sioux area in Nevada. And he says, I told him, well, my grandparents from my mother's side are from there too. And he says, well, our grandmothers are talking, putting us together. So I want to call it our grandmothers talking because,
Oh, I love that title.
I want to bring in how important ancestral knowledge is to understand it, but to apply it. There's a lot of beautiful things we've lost because of colonialism, conquest, racism. When I was in Puerto Rico, I met this beautiful Taino cacique
Mm.
because they bring back the Taino, and he was very knowledgeable. I was very surprised. I don't know why. He was from the Bronx, but he knew his roots, and he went to Puerto Rico, and he got initiated into the tribe. And he says they have a beautiful center there. And I didn't go to the center, but I met him at a gathering. He was very knowledgeable. So people are going back to learn these ways, but again, not to go back like we're going to go back to live the way it was, but to see how it applies. Like you're talking about nature, how we've lost connection with nature is
Yeah.
one big thing. There's so many disconnections that we have as human beings, and we get isolated from them, alienated in our culture the way we are now.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to write a book to help us understand. I don't want a book. I have so many elders among the indigenous people. I don't want a book about them so much or interviewing them. It's more like what have I learned from them, going through me. So that's one of the books I'm working on. So going to Mexico was very helpful because again, I learned more and more about the cosmology, and I hope to. I also have a book of poetry I want to do. I have so much writing, so we'll see what happens.
I get that because I've been trying to put out a poetry book for the last 2 years, and thanks
All
to
right.
your son, I keep giving him like 10 poems, 5 poems here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's a great copy editor. I tell people that I use him for Theatre Press, and other people have asked him. He gets really busy, so I think he doesn't do that much anymore, but he's really
No,
good.
he's very good. He gives me a lot of great ideas. So we are coming to the end of our interview. Is there anything that you would like to say to the audience?
Well, just that really these interviews are important. We bring up a lot of ideas. We connect to what's going on. Like I said, I'm very active. Me and my wife Trini, we're out there. Tia Chucha's Centro Cultural is doing very well. These young people, we turned it over to them just before the pandemic, and they're just making everything happen. They're just so beautiful. They have like 18, 20 staff now.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so me and Trini don't do the day by day work there anymore. And, but we help. We do a lot. She's on the board, and I do outreach, fundraising. They kind of see us as elders. They bring them in and us in if there's any issues. I just want to mention how beautiful that is, and anybody's welcome to come to Tia Chucha Centro Cultural bookstore. And
It's a great bookstore.
yeah, it's the website's tiachucha.org. Anybody can check it out. If you want to buy books, buy it through us because it helps the community. We have a great bookstore there.
Yes, it's a beautiful bookstore. So I wanted to thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Poetic Resurrection podcast, available on Apple iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, and many other podcast platforms. Please visit us and subscribe to our newsletter at poeticresurrection.com for the latest information and updates.